Okay, so hello for those of you who don't know me. My name is Noel, and I am a developer and entrepreneur. I am currently working at Moodle 4 days a week, and I am using the fifth day on working in side projects. And I'm basically focusing on Solid now. I usually work in the open, so I encourage you to visit my website and learn more about what I am doing. And you can also follow my socials if you want more updates. But today we are here to talk about Media Kraken. So what is it? It's a Solid application. It's open source, so you can go look at the code, and I encourage you to ask me any questions you may have. And the problem it's trying to solve is to track media consumption. So basically, all the movies that you want to see or that you have seen, you can keep track of that in Media Kraken, and you don't have to remember or keep track of it yourself, right? So I think the best way to see how it works is to actually do a demo, right? So this is what you see when you open Media Kraken, and you have to choose where you want to store your data. You can use a Solid account, and it will be stored in your pod, or you can use browser storage, and the data will remain in your device, right? So to get started in this demo, we will use browser storage, and you will see when you open the application the first time, there isn't anything here. This is because the idea of Media Kraken is to keep a collection of your movies. So it will not do any recommendations or anything like that. If you are already doing this in other platforms, you can import here using these options. For example, I'm sure most of you already are familiar with Internet Movie Database. So you can take movies from there and add them here. And there is also the JSON LD format, which is the one that is used behind the scenes in Solid applications. So you can also create scripts. If any platform is not here, you can create a script that translates data into JSON LD, and this is also possible. But I know that not everyone is already tracking their movies in other platforms, right? So to get started, you can choose this option, and this will add to your collection the 100 top rated movies from Internet Movie Database, right? So we will do that right now. You can see how the movies are being added to your collection. You can stop before if you want. And here, once you have that, you can start marking. Every time you see a movie, you mark it as watched, right? You can see how the movies there are sent to your collection in there. And the idea of this home is that when you come to the application in Media Kraken, you would see what movies you have pending to watch. So next time you want to see a movie, here's where you can see your options of the recommendations you have already got, right? If we go to my collection, you can see here all the movies, and you can filter them by the ones you have already watched or the ones that are pending to watch. And you can also filter using text, right? And this is what you would do most of the time in Media Kraken and the day-to-day when you are watching movies, right? But it's also possible that you get a new recommendation and you want to add a new movie. And instead of importing it from an existing platform, maybe you want to add it here directly, right? So that is what this search bar is for, right? Let's see. So one of the movies I will add is Pirates of the Caribbean. This was actually one of the inspirations for doing Media Kraken, because I wanted to say that I have released the Kraken, right? So now I can say I have done it. So here you can add a movie to your collection, searching here. And if you go and see details of the movie, you can get here a little bit more information, and you have links to other platforms. So if you want to learn more about the movie, like the directors, the actors, etc., you can use these links. And so far, we have been using this in our local device, right? So if I were to open a phone, my phone device, I wouldn't have this data, right? So let's log out, and you will see that the application is warning us that if we do this, we will lose the data. This is because since it's only in the device and we are logging out, it will not be stored anywhere else. So before we do that, we can save our data here. And now we have the data in our computer in a file, right? We can proceed with logout. And now let's log in with a Solid account. This is actually talking with a server, so let's see if the demo works properly. Okay, seems like it works fine. Okay, we have an error. This always happens in demos. Okay, let's do If you try, it's probably because I was messing up with some things before the demo. If you try, it will probably work. If it doesn't, let me know and I can help you fix it, right? The idea is that when you come back with in your solid pod, you will see the same thing because you don't have any data. But this time you can choose this option and you can open the file you had already downloaded before. And that way you will have your data, but now it will be safe in your solid pod, right? And everything else will work the same way. So let's do a review of the features I have shown you. The first one is progressive adoption. So when you first use the application, one of the barriers for users is to have a solid pod. This is maybe one of the things that keeps users from using solid apps, right? So in this case, you can start using it, keeping data in the browser, and once you are ready, you upgrade to using solid. In a way, you can think of this as having a pod in your device, although it's not exactly the same because it's not using the technology that a solid pod would use, but it's kind of similar, right? To get started, I think it's a good option to have. You can import data from the platforms you already use to keep track of your data. And one comment I will make here is that Good Films, for example, is not a website that I already knew. A user actually opened an issue in the GitHub repo of Media Kraken, and I helped him add this option. And now this is possible in Media Kraken, right? So if you have any trouble importing your data from existing sources, let me know and I will help you get it done, right? You can also search movies. This is powered by the Movie Database API. It's an API that is really powerful because there is a lot of data available that it's for public use. And the difference with the Internet Movie Database is that this is more open and open to the community. So if there is any movie that is missing, you can just add it yourself, like you would edit a Wikipedia page, right? So in this case, this is very useful. Uh, Something I didn't go over in the demo is that it's prepared to work on a mobile phone. So the design is completely responsive and you can install it using the progressive web app technologies. So if you open the application with the browser in the phone, you will see that you have an option to install the application or add it to your home screen, depending on your operative system. And you will be able to use it like a normal application, a native application. Uh, it doesn't have it doesn't have any trackers, and some unintended consequence of this is that I actually don't know how many people is using Media Kraken, because if you see the list of servers here, none of them are my server, right? So I don't really know how many people is using Media Kraken, and in a way that's kind of fun. It's what Tim mentioned, that we can focus on the application and we don't have to care about servers, right? So the API it is using is the movie database, as I mentioned before. It also uses GitHub pages to host the static assets like HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And it uses Sentry to do error reporting, but this is disabled by default. So if you don't allow it or manually send the error, it will not communicate with Sentry in any way. And of course, it's also talking to your pod if you are using login, solid login. And this is a roadmap of some of the things I plan to do in the future. I definitely want to improve the search and the filters. It would be nice to have more information here, like the searching movies by actor or by director, etc. I also want to create lists and share them with my friends. This is something I already started working, but it's still a bit in development. It's not ready for users. And I would also like to track other types of media, like TV shows. After all, it's not called Movie Kraken, it's Media Kraken, so it should do more things, right? And I think it's also important that I mention some of the things that Media Kraken doesn't do, and I don't think it will do, because these are a design choice. It doesn't do recommendations. As I mentioned, the idea is that Media Kraken keeps track of your collection of movies. And this may be a personal choice, but personally, I don't like to see recommendations from algorithms, right? And also the social interactions, it's something that I think it's already happening in other platforms that may be decentralized anyways, but I don't want to put this in Media Kraken, at least not in the medium term. Some time from now, we will see. But the good thing about Solid is that this doesn't mean that you cannot do it. There can be other Solid applications that use the same data that Media Kraken does, and they can enrich your experience. And you will not have to choose either Media Kraken or these other applications. You can use a different application for different use cases, and your data will still be synchronized everywhere. That's one of the good things about Solid, right? Uh, so now I know some of you are developers there, and maybe you want to know more about how this is built. So this is the basic stack I have used. Vue.js is for JavaScript and UI. Tailwind CSS is for the stylings. And Sokai.js is for the data persistence. And maybe you already know Tailwind and Vue. If you don't, I encourage you to search about it because there is a lot of information. But maybe you don't know what Sokai.js is, right? So the reason because that you don't know it is because I have made it, and it's an active record implementation in JavaScript. Active record is a design pattern that allows you to define a model, and this model then gets persisted in a database or in a persistent layer without you having to worry about the persistent format, right? You can also search about this pattern online if you want to know more. And the idea is that you can use different engines, and each engine determines where the data will be stored, right? So for example, in Media Kraken, I am using the browser storage the IndexedDB engine to store in the browser storage, and the Solid engine to store data in a Solid pod. And the good thing is that most of the application doesn't know anything about where the data is being stored. Everything is built using the Sokai.js models API, and only a couple of files that take care of these things are the ones who know if you are using browser or solid pod, right? Here you can see how the models are defined in Media Kraken. The central one is a movie, right? And you can see how a movie has title, description, release date, etc. And all of these attributes that you use when you are developing the application, once you save the data, they will be translated into their appropriate vocabulary RDF types, right? So for example, the release date will be a schema date published. And the idea is that you only define this in the model, and in the rest of your application, this works seamlessly, right? And this is an example of how you would use these models after defining them. You just create an instance like new movie, and you can notice that the release date, for example, is a native JavaScript date. So you don't have to worry about giving it the correct turtle format or whatever. You just use the native types from your programming. And then when it's saved, it will take care of translating everything. Here you can see some other examples, how to get a list of movies. And also, since it is an object and you can define methods on top of it, you can define methods that make sense for this kind of model. For example, movie.watch, this is something I have defined in Media Kraken. It's not part of Sokai. And what it does is that it creates a watch action under the hood and makes all the modifications to the movie so that it's considered a watch movie, right? And this can be encapsulated in the model class. And basically, this is all I have for today. I encourage you to use the application and give me feedback on what you think and if I can help you with something. And if you are a developer and you want to learn more about how it is built, you can go to my website, and I have been journaling about everything I learned in Solid. So you can see my whole journey since I discovered what Solid was until today. And I hope it's useful to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Noel. That is awesome.
It's
And
a
it was
shame that the demo didn't work, but I promise it works.
I believe you. And actually, a few people did actually said they tried it out and they are using it right now and it works. So that's awesome. And secondly, I like that you did the Pirates of Caribbean with the Kraken because we're all about defeating the Kraken, but also like using the Media Kraken. So like the combination. Again, thank you for that. I really appreciate your presentation. I guess you can ask your other question.
I just wanted to tell Noel that you were just unlucky. The moment you wanted to show on the CSS, there was a chat message saying the community server is going down for upgrade. So there's nothing wrong with your demo. And also I wanted to tell you, because I have no interest on that site, that if you want to include the other providers, there is something called ororo.tv. And also I have a general philosophical comment, last one. Thank you for your patience. You mentioned that there is no information keeping in Kraken because nothing stays there registered, but all comes from other sources, the movie databases, GitHub, etc. And the philosophical question in terms of solid philosophy is the following. The specifications were moved recently, solid specifications were moved from GitHub to solid project web premises in order not to have external dependencies on GitHub. But in general, if one has to import or consult or deposit part of one's solid data to external applications, then you can be sovereign and controlling of your data on your solid pod, but you don't avoid the hijacking of the information when it comes to GitHub or anything else that is not on your control. You see what I mean? So this is a comment. Don't know if you can mute me, Marel, because I spoke enough today.
No, you're fine. We have time for one more point if you want to, but
I can answer. I have some comments. Yeah, okay. So first about this platform you mentioned, I don't think I will add it if nobody asks me. I use it and I want to migrate it, because if I start searching for sites that track movies, it will never end, right? So I prefer to see a use case that somebody opens an issue in GitHub and they tell me, I want it, and I will help them do it. And eventually, I don't think if this will happen, but if there is a lot of sites, I will refactor that screen, because I don't want, when people open, I don't want them to see 50 sites to import data from, right? So the importing data thing, I think it's more, I want to do it organically, right? And the ones I have there are only because I know they are useful, right? And what you mentioned about the dependencies with other sites, GitHub, it's only using GitHub pages. This means that it's hosted there. So it's only using it for hosting the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And it's like the download mechanism. You could, actually in GitHub, there is also a zip file, and you can download that zip file and you use Media Kraken from there. So it's only hosting, and once you have the files to run the application, you don't need them. You don't need GitHub anymore. You also need it if you want updates, of course, but the application works without GitHub. And the movie database thing, this is something also that it's only useful if you use the search functionality. But if you are importing your data using JSON LD, you don't need that either, because the images, for example, they come from Internet Movie Database, the movie database. But if you create a JSON LD and you upload it with your own data, it will use whatever URL you tell it. So technically, it doesn't have any hard dependencies. It has some dependencies in practice to make the experience easier for users. And if you find any issues with that, open it in GitHub and I will help you.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. Thank you.
Can I respond to that very quickly? That I was first excited by Media Kraken because it's a great example of something which uses both personal data and public data. So the IMDb database is this sort of jewel that lots of people have worked on. Other code I've worked uses Wikidata for lists of things, for lists of organizations, for lists of different types of jobs, something like that. So people got a lot of trouble to curate those things. And to a certain extent, the solid world started off being very focused on personal data, but actually your world is a spectrum. All the stuff you do, some of it, when you are public, the identity of a movie is a pretty public thing, and you might share that with lots of people. And so I think it's valuable if we decide the movie database or IMDb or Wikidata or whatever it is, if these are things that we find putting into our code makes the apps useful, and putting them into our pod then becomes more valuable because it's linked to all this rich background of reference data about all kinds of things, then I think we may end up with a solid community having to say, yeah, part of our job, we will, for little, every now and again, we will put effort into making sure that community, the Wikidata community, IMDb, are all happy and well-funded, or we will put effort, we will also corral opportunity people, volunteers to go in and make sure that they've, that the database is maintained and up to date.
Thank you. And just to make sure that we do end on time, I will do 2 more questions, and then we'll close out the event, just again to make sure of timing. So our next question will be from Juan, if you don't mind asking your question. Okay, you are on mute. Alrighty, I will ask the question on behalf. So they said, I currently love and use Media Kraken. I have a question. Do you plan to introduce a feature to decide if I want to share my database to some friends?
Yeah, okay, so I already kind of started working on this to sharing lists with others, and I will post the link in the chat, okay? So if you go to the Media Kraken app and you write /viewer, you can go to a viewer that the idea of this is that you only see movies, so you don't need a Solid account or anything. The issue with this is that right now you need to know a bit about Solid to create this list to share with others. And this is something I want to do in the future to help people do it, people who don't know how to modify Solid files. But I will also say that if you want to share your collection of movies, like all of your movies, you can download the JSON and give the JSON to them. And when they open Media Kraken, they can import the JSON, right? And JSON is a very common file. And even if you are not a developer, there are many tools. For example, JSON Editor Online, I think, something like this. You can open the JSON file and you yourself, you can see the data that's there. And you can remove movies or whatever and share the JSON directly. So it's not really easy right now, but you can do it. And I would like to improve it in the future. And I will say, if anyone has any specific request like this, go ahead and open an issue, because I think it's better if we can talk about it. Yeah.